Shalom, Daniel.
Hi, Audit. Hope you're well.
Yes, thank you. I'm well. How about yourself?
A little bit of sniffles of cold, but I'm fine for talking. And I'm saw the video you sent me, and I've been reading some other things. So yeah, I've got plenty to talk about.
Yeah. Which video? I mean, I sent you two videos, and you mentioned that you read Henry's book, right?
So Henry Levy's written a book, Israel Alone,
Yeah.
which is a passionate, thoughtful revisiting of just about all the major points that everybody said, but it's got the added uh, personal note in there that he knew a lot of the areas that were hit on October the 7th, and he knew a lot of people that he was talking to who had been peace lovers, who wanted peace, who were working for peace, and have been so knocked back and so hurt by what's happened that they quite depressed in many, many ways. And I think his book, Israel Alone, the title shows you how he felt about the whole thing.
Mm.
How quickly the world changed from, oh my goodness, what happened on October the 7th, where with what a tragedy, to October the 8th, October the 9th, Israel stopped killing people. Um, and that was literally what happened, and he was quite surprised. And then the two videos you sent me, well, the second one was the 60 minutes about the pager attacks. Um, and I was quite interested in that because I'm quite interested in strategy. I've listened to a lot of generals talking over the years about wars, and I listen to them because they have studied everyone from the ancient world right up to the modern times. There's very little they don't know about marshaling men, about marshaling people, and about tactics. And one of the things I heard a general say years ago, you don't fight the next war on the basis of the last one. That is the biggest mistake you can make.
Mm.
If you plan for the next war on the basis of the one that's just gone, you haven't got a hope.
Yeah.
And I'm reminded in the Second World War, the people who were designing the Spitfire were designing it in 1933. They knew then, Marshall actually said, these people are going to go to war with us, and we
Mhm.
need a single engine fighter plane that's better than anything they've got.
Mhm.
And the whole network of radar was put in secret by Macmillan, not Macmillan, by Chamberlain. So here you've got the man that everybody has accused of being a peacenik and of trying to pacify the vileness of the regime, was actually the one who made sure that the one of the systems was in place that saved this country.
Yeah.
So people aren't stupid. They just, and I think Henry Levy said this in his book, they just want so desperately to believe that what they're seeing is impossible.
Yes. So before we continue, let's just say that there are two videos in a book, and we're going to discuss how about all of them are connected, which is
Yes.
the 60, I mean, the 60 minutes interview that one of the American networks did with the Mossad agents about the
Mhm.
Viper, the super hero, like, I guess, movie Hollywood-like operation. We're going to see a lot of movies about that.
Yeah. Well,
And
it was 10 years in the planning. And I think
right?
that's the key. It was 10 years that they've been
Yes, it's
preparing
been like,
in
yeah,
case
it
they
was
needed it.
a
Yeah.
long process. And then the second video was about the Arabs destroying the Christmas decorations in central London and hanging up like Palestine, whatever they call it, Palestine flags. Um, and you can see uh, like a wave of bikers coming into that like area and just, in my opinion, terrorizing the entire people there. And then we're talking about Henry's book. So I would like to start like we
So I
said.
think in the timeline, Henry's book comes.
Yes. So let's touch about that because
Um,
I haven't read it. You read it, and the title of the book is Israel. What was it? Israel Alone? Stands alone?
Israel alone.
Israel Alone.
Yeah, yeah. Israel,
And you
Israel alone.
mentioned that
Purely.
I'm sorry.
That's just it. Israel alone.
No, Israel
It
Alone.
came out four, 3, 4 months ago.
Oh, okay. So it's
Um,
very
so yeah. And
updated.
he arrived in Israel the day after it started. He'd been in Ukraine for quite a while.
Okay.
Um,
Well, he's
and
been busy.
he's been busy. Well, he's a
Yeah.
journalist. He's respected. He knows what he's talking about.
Mm,
But he was, even when he arrived, the cleanup had started. So he didn't see some of the terrible things, but he talked to people who had survived. He saw the remnants of what had happened. He described what he saw, and in very heartrending terms.
mhm.
Um, but at no time did he say that, therefore, we have to kill everybody. At no time did he say what we're about to do is revenge. That's not what his book was about. His book was about the hateful nature of bigotry and how it makes people less
Yeah.
than human to his eyes.
Yeah.
And the way in which the international community immediately changed tack from seeing the horrible things that were done that should never have been done. And Henry was right. He called it a pogrom. That's exactly what I saw
Yes,
on
it
October
was.
the 7th.
It
When
was.
the first news came through, I said, we've just witnessed the first pogrom of the 21st century.
Yes.
Uh, and so that made him think that this hatred's gone nowhere. And it's quite interesting that I've been talking to some friends in America, and they are, in a sense, more shocked than the Jewish community in Europe. Now, I can't speak for the Jewish community per se in Europe, but for my own self, I never thought the hatred had gone anywhere. I used to say when I was in my 20s at school, at college, that they had such a bloodletting in the Second World War that they're just a bit quieter than normal.
Mhm.
But I did not in any way consider that that had cured this prejudice. And in my entire life, watching how people talk about Israel and watching how easy it was for the extreme Muslim thinker to tap into that old prejudice in
Mhm.
Europe and in America, and exploit it to
Mm.
the full.
Yeah.
He talked about the students. He talked about what had happened to academia in America. He was astonished that anybody could even talk about these things or do these things, um, in the same terms and in the same breath as what had been done to the Israelis.
Yeah.
It was no one else would have accepted this. No other country would have been treated like this, and I think that's
That's
why
true.
he talked about Israel alone.
Yeah.
Um, and behind this, or
Yeah.
for my own self, behind this entire argument that we face is the assumption by the people who are promoting it that Israel should not exist.
Yes.
So we have no right to any
Mm.
ethical value system at all.
So it
We
goes
have
back. I'm sorry. Finish your.
carry on. No, carry on.
No, so it goes back to the heart of my um of of everything that I'm saying. This is not a political war. This is not a geographical war. This is not a territorial war. This is a religious war. And Israel or the Jews are the first one to be participating in it. Everybody else is next. And I would like to touch on what he said about those people who were there were peace seekers, like all the people who lived in like those kibbutzim around, like the ones that got hit directly uh, from the Nukhba terrorists were very, very peacemakers people. They were sending them like balloons and stuff behind like the fences and they They were hoping for the fence to not exist so they can coexist with them. They were doing a lot of things for them. They used them as their workers. They built their house. That's actually how they got the information of knowing who is in the house, how many people in the house, what is the layout of the house, because those people who they paid for to build their houses are the ones who provided that information to the terrorists, or they are terrorists. Um, and the other day, I mean, there are many of them, but I saw a short video of a father who lost a son and a wife. And he was saying, to some degree, I am happy that I paid the price where I was and not in other areas of Judea and Samaria. Because if it would have happened to them, I would have said, yes, why are they living there? And now I understand. I would have blamed them. But now I understand that that's not the truth. And the truth is that those are terrorists and there's nobody to speak to. There is nothing to talk about peace. And saying it as a person who lost his own wife and his own kid, that takes some like strong realization, like, hit of reality to say something like that. And there are a lot of people who feel the same. They may not use the exact same blunt words that he used, but they feel the same. And they don't think that there is any partner because there was never a partner. And if we, this is not something that happens in a day. Those are things that develop within years. And that's the thing about the left or others, that they have patience. They have, they take the time with processes, and they just build it in such a systematic way that it's hard afterwards to destruct or to prevent from things to happen. So if you talk also about like how people in within 24 hours have been sympathized with Israel, then they're not sympathetic, or like talking about, oh, what they're doing, they're killing like terrorists, which they call innocent, but they're terrorists. Then it's just it's something that has been built for many, many decades and years in systems, in universities, especially like you mentioned. And it's funded by Qatar, as you know, I believe. They have their cells, like cells where they feed you information, okay, through the academia, right?
I
And
have
it's all in the names of pluralism and liberalism.
I
And
can't tell you who this person is because it's private information, but
mhm.
an academic was asked to in the conclaves they have when they sit and they discuss what their faculty is going to be doing, was asked to okay the fact that they were going to bring into an American university a man who had a large following, a largish following as far as the university was concerned, but had said some very anti-Semitic things on his podcast. And she said no, she wouldn't allow it. So they attacked her. And they said that she wasn't allowing other voices. They said that the dean said to her, well, we're going to have this man come on campus anyway, despite you. And basically they were saying to her, go. We don't want you in the university anymore if this is
Wow.
this is going to be your attitude if you don't follow what we're saying to you. Now, I think that it's really difficult to understand academia without being deeply involved in it, but there is a wokeism and there is a
Yes.
priming that has gone on for a long, long time, which is based very much upon legitimate emotion, but not upon open and honest factual discussion.
I'll tell you what's the problem is when it comes to Israel and anti-Semitism. It's that they base their stories, facts on very extreme auto-anti-Semitic left Jews, like Elon, what's his name? I forgot, Elon something, who known to be very, very anti-Zionist, anti-Israel. He's Israeli, he's Jewish. He was born in Israel. So they based all their information on Haaretz news, like on a very far, far left extreme um uh auto-anti-Semitic Jews. And that we can see throughout history, right? It's not something new. We always had it, unfortunately. Even if you go back to the Bible, you always had someone within the group that had harmed the entire group. If you go to the Holocaust, you see that. You can see through the entire history. So we still have it, unfortunately. And that's what they're based there. When they want to provide the so-called other opinion, and just to show you that we're open to hear someone else, they give you the most, like, the one that would give them all the backup they need, but their name is Israeli and they're Jewish, so that's what it is. Like, like someone saying like what's going on now in Gaza is ethnic cleansing, which obviously it's not by any definition or means. But if someone who's Jewish or former head of head of the army who he's just lost his mind, he's saying it because of his personal issues with Netanyahu because he wants him thrown out, then again they will take it, they will abuse it. But what I'm saying, the basic is that when they do, as I say, they cover all of it in pluralism and inclusion, but not if you don't think like them. And that's exactly the example that you gave with that person.
Yeah. And there's just been a debate at Oxford Union 6, 7 weeks ago. And the proposition was something like Israel is a genocidal state. So they had two Arabs talking against the proposition. One of them was that very famous man who's the son of a Hamas commander, has tried to tell the world exactly what Hamas is about. And the other was also an Arab who, when he was being heckled, translated what the people in the chamber were saying, because he's fluent Arabic speaker. The hate speech. This is Oxford University. This is where this chamber has trained prime ministers for hundreds of years. It is run upon the same kind of rules and regulations that Parliament in Westminster is run on, because that was why it was created. It's a debating chamber where you're supposed to be debating facts. They had to expel one person. She went hysterical, screaming and wouldn't stop screaming. The amount of abuse that the people who were arguing against the proposition received in the chamber and outside on social media was so intense that they've opened up a hate speech and defamation investigation through the police.
Wow.
Right? This is happening everywhere. And the reasons for it are very simple. The reasons for it are because when you are in a war and you have an enemy, lying is a weapon. And they are using it continuously and without regard. I've just seen again this year various people posting on social media, Jesus was a Palestinian.
Oh my gosh.
I have seen.
I have no issue using that term as long as I am a Palestinian too. You have to understand.
Okay, fair enough.
Part of
Absolutely
other,
fair enough.
countries in the region. That's fine, but that's
And
not it.
But we also had this well, probably 2 or 3 years ago, maybe it started, but It might have started with the DNA research 20 years ago, but suddenly we weren't Jews anyway. We were all Karaitic converts. We were a plant from the Western colonial
Oh,
enterprise
oh,
into the area.
okay.
They tried all these things.
And you're
Some got
telling this
traction,
to
some
me, and
didn't.
I am a living proof of 2000 years of like being isolated and waiting and wanting to come to Israel, and like we're lucky enough that my parents were lucky enough and my grandparents to come to Israel after 2000 years, and they're saying what they're saying. Okay, so I mean,
Yeah. They'll try anything. They'll
I
try
know.
anything to see what gets traction.
There's a saying in
But this
Hebrew
is,
that says before לפני שהאמת לבשה מכנסיים, השקר גברת. Like before the truth put its pants, the lie already started running. So it's kind of
yeah.
like, you just like the effect that words are having like is so great that people use it so lightly. So
And the upshot and the tragedy is that you give these lies to a 5-year-old. By the time that 5-year-old's 18, you end up with the Hamas murderer
that's
on
true.
October the 7th.
Yeah.
That's what you end up with. It doesn't go anywhere else.
Yeah.
And the fight, therefore, is a continuous fight for just honest conversation, for just facts, for telling the truth,
Mhm.
but also to understand that no matter how you tell the truth, no matter that you might be right, and we are right, no matter that you've got the facts, there's 100 million or more people out there who are never going to believe you
Right.
because they want Israel gone.
Yeah.
I think in that first article I wrote about the foundations of anti-Semitism, I think I ended it by saying it is impossible for the mullahs of Iran to give up their fight. Impossible. You cannot make peace with them. They will try and get a nuclear weapon any way they can. They will kill every Arab in the area just so long as they can destroy the state,
Yeah.
because that is their religious dictum.
Yeah.
They have replaced the Jews in the eyes of God. Therefore, the Jews cannot exist there. They cannot exist where Jerusalem is. That's just impossible for them. So the only way forward is to bring them down and let the Iranian people have a democratic society of their own. If it is true that 90% of the Iranian people are in fact under oppression and want freedom. Uh, but there will still be people in the world who will
There
want it gone.
always will be
That's never
people.
going to change.
Yeah, there always
Yeah,
will be
that's
that.
never going to change.
So let's go back
But
to the
this,
book.
this,
Okay, finish.
yes, go back to the book. Okay.
No, I just want to summarize the book and then move to the two videos.
So I think he talked about the shock that the irony that the people who were hit the worst were the people who fought most strongly for peace in
Yeah.
the Israeli community over the
Mhm.
past 50 years, maybe.
Mhm.
Certainly, as you said, they were there, they wanted to help, and they were the ones who were destroyed. And it has the ones who survived just us, apart from being shell shocked or in October, when they came to, they just said, "How can you make peace with such people? That's just not possible. You have to defeat them." And they put their shoulder to the wheel to make sure that that defeat happened.
Yeah,
Now,
that's the
within
only
that
way
defeat,
actually to get any kind of peace is just to defeat them.
the tragedy is it's a war. The tragedy is that children die, that women die, that houses are destroyed, that people's lives who probably didn't want to kill anybody but have ended up in the middle of this. I don't know how many. Certainly of the 40 to 50,000 now that are considered to have died, over half were actually jihadis, were actually Hamas, were actually are the enemy. But this is war, and this
Yeah.
is I don't think Henry talked about this particularly, but people die in war.
Yeah.
If you're going to win, people are going to die. That's it. You have very little choice about it. And the laws that were written after the Second World War to try and cover some of this are quite indistinct. The law on proportionality doesn't mention any numbers
Yeah.
at all. It just talks about a general thought to be given about your military objective and how many people are going to die to attain it. But it doesn't say you mustn't ever do it. And it
Mhm.
doesn't say if it's a million people. I mean, look, 100,000 people died when the bomb was dropped on Hiroshima,
Yeah.
but it might have saved a million people. Who's to know?
Yeah.
We need more discussion. So that what Henry said at the end was that the Jewish people have to understand that Israel was supposed to be the sanctuary. It has had a very bad hit, and there was a moment when being a sanctuary for the Jewish people looked in danger. Was this really possible to have a pogrom in what should be the safest place for Jewish people in the world?
Mm.
And his conclusions were that we're not going anywhere. Jewish people are not going anywhere. They've been around a long, long time. This is just the latest in a very long line of thousands of years of enemies, and we have to face them down.
Mm.
We have no choice.
Yeah.
And um, I think, as my mother we used to say, the tragedy for her is every Jewish person that dies, all that talent, all that wonderful ideas, all that knowledge, all that passion, all the potential that is there, which has been proven time and time again amongst Jewish people in every country in which they have lived.
Yeah.
They have risen to the top of music, of art, of literature, of thinking, of politics. Um, and I
Improve
think
their
it was
environment.
deGrasse Tyson. I'm not a great fan of these kind of statistics, but deGrasse Tyson said something like 40% of all Nobel Prizes have been given to Jews, and 9 Arabs or 9 Muslims have won the Nobel Prize since its inception. And he was trying to, I guess he was trying to make a very crude point. But I think the point where we are at the moment is that you're right. We're the spearhead. We're at the point where there is a lack of democracy, a lack of equality, a lack of women's rights, a lack of children's rights, facing down 50 to 60 years, if not more, of hard democratic slog in the democratic countries. And they will overrun us if they can.
Yeah. So, I
If
mean,
they can.
they they can. The question is if the countries will allow it. At this point of time, it seems like they're allowing it. And one example is what happened yesterday in central London. Like I don't know if you saw, well, you saw the video, but it's I don't know how many bikers were there. It was like maybe 30. I don't know how many were they. They're all like with their bikes going into I don't know exactly where it was, but it's like probably a nice area where all the decoration people go to see the decorations in central London. That's probably where they go. And they took it out and they just put like those flags of that fake place, but never mind. They put those flags and then they just stayed there and they like drove with their bikes for a little while. That's what I saw in the short video. But the way that they acted, this is pure terrorism, and that's what people don't understand. Those guys act like this is their home, like the UK is their home, the UK is their country. It belongs to them. That's what they believe. Only a person who believes in his core that this land belongs to them will do such thing.
But
But
I think for a
it
long
says here that we're running out of time in a few minutes, so
Okay, well, for a long, long time, there is a large section of Islam that has believed that it should rule the world. Um, I think when Doran asked me, is Europe going to fall? Because we saw a year ago what was going on in France, the killings. We're having to have security guards outside places where Jewish people have been going freely for over a century. And I think that I said you're dealing that kind of thing where they're putting flags up is public disorder, and the police are quite well aware of how to deal with that if they have the will to do it. But if there was anything worse than that, if there were riots, then you're dealing with Europe. You're dealing with the continent that's produced some of the finest disciplined armies the world has ever
Yeah,
seen.
but that happened in Holland like two,
Uh,
3 weeks
yeah,
ago.
yeah,
I mean, a month ago, and there was also like some sort of a program that happened towards like Israeli Jews who just
yeah, and
went to watch a soccer game.
yeah,
So
because
it's not
Holland
like
has a very
they're
particular
already
problem.
like in there. That's exactly what I was talking about. How they're like for many, many years they've built in systematically an
Mm,
idea of pluralism and patience and inclusion, but without like, and they took all those like beautiful words and used them as for their own protection, and they're protecting themselves under those ideas and creating new idea of like, no, you can't touch us because if you do so, you are not you're not patient enough and you're not inclusive enough. And if you do so, we'll make sure you wouldn't do it again because we'll go out in the streets, and not just that, we will hurt you.
yeah, Europe has a problem. There's
Yeah.
absolutely no doubt that Europe has a problem. The question is, can it be dealt with by the police? Can it
It's
be,
a
and are
question
the
of
laws?
policies, and it's not about the policy. It's a question of a policy. It's a question of what the spirit in the streets here is in different countries. It just depends on the people. And like at the beginning and at the end of things, it depends on the people, and that's the problem with the academia. The academia
Yeah.
just like makes you like a robot, and to some degree, right? I mean, I have like my master's. Yeah, I have like my undergrad and I have my graduate degree. You can benefit from going to university, but as long as you have parents or someone who tells you, you have to think for your own. You can't just be like take everything they tell you for granted. And that's the difference in Judaism. Judaism always questions things. They
Mm.
never take something in face value. They first questions and then they would like either agree with it or not agree with it, whatever it is. But but that's the thing. It's about the spirit of the people. If the people are willing to be defeated, they will be defeated. But you can see
Mm.
also a change, a shift within everywhere in the world. But here it might be like in the UK, it might be a little late, but also in the US, you see it like a shift of like being ultra, ultra, ultra liberal uh, to the point where like they confirming into like mental issues, right? And saying that that's the mainstream. Being a mental issue person, that's the mainstream, which is not. And that's how far it went. What I'm trying to say is at the end of the day, is that it's a matter of what the people want. If they're willing to contain this and continue with it, nothing is going to stay. It's going to be saved out of England or Europe for that matter. Depends where in Europe, because you see Poland having very, strict policies, very strict, clear policies. And so it depends. It depends on the people. Like people can still vote, they can still influence. If they vote right wing, then it might be different.
I think it depends on how awake their political thinkers are, because behind all this, you still got the weight of people saying, well, it's only the Jews. They deserve it. They can protest against them because they did take a country away from another people. They haven't seen the truth because they haven't been subjected to very much discussion, and they certainly are brainwashed. But
Yeah.
more than that, even, they don't realize. I've heard a few people say it, but they don't realize it as a political class. They're next.
Yes, exactly.
They're coming for them. We're just the first. We
Yeah,
always are. We always
yeah,
are, but we are just the first in this instance. The Sudan was Took 500 years for the Muslims to split Sudan in half. But they did it because they wouldn't live with the 10 million Christians. They all had to go off to another part of the country so that North Sudan could be Muslim. Uh, so when you're saying they're building up and they're building up, yeah, they're building up now and they're doing this now because Israel is there and it's a thorn in their side. But they're also planning the long game. They want to take Europe. They've always have. They were defeated in the 1400s in battle, and now they're inside Europe and they're trying to make sure that it is as Muslim as they can possibly make it. I wonder when they will make their move to have Sharia law in some part of England, what will happen? I probably won't be alive.
No,
Um,
but I'm sure, no, I think you will be alive.
you think?
Those processes now, that Bezrat Hashem, God willing, you live until 120 with good health. Um, those processes, like it took them a very long time to get to this point, but you see now that everything is out in the open, and they see how people are not reacting to it, then everything is speed up. Like from now on, you're gonna see like the process very speeding up.
Okay,
It's
that's
not gonna be
yeah.
a slow process like it was. Like that, whatever took them 20 years will take them now
Mm,
2 years
yeah,
or five
yeah.
years, whatever it is. Europe is on the verge of collapse, like cultural collapse. They're being taken over by people who don't think that democracy is the right way to go.
Yeah. Well, cultural collapse and the collapse in the art world is something that, yeah, I've been observing for quite a while. The political collapse that we're really talking about is something that, in a way, you could expect from a democratic country. It's got so far down into the laissez-faire attitudes that it no longer knows where its moral compass is.
Yeah.
And that's a real problem. But if you go all too far the other way, you end up with a restrictive society. So finding the middle ground has been muddied by the fact that you've got an influx of people who are bringing their hatreds and their political attunement to a particular philosophy into countries that are not used to it.
Yeah.
The extremes of Christianity were done away with in England from the 1830s onwards. The extremes of Catholicism finally broke in Ireland 20 years ago when they found out what the priests had been doing to their children. But interestingly, in Ireland, they didn't lose their anti-Semitism. It
Yeah.
is the most anti-Semitic country outside of Poland in the whole of Europe. So they kept that bit of Catholicism, at least. Uh, and I don't know where it's going to go. Of course, I don't. I'm just an observer in many
Yeah.
ways.
When was
But
the last elections in the UK? Was it a
so
year
it
ago?
was, yeah, no, it was October.
Oh, so a
Uh,
few months
yeah,
ago.
so Keir Starmer just got in with the Labour in a huge, great landslide. And that's not surprising because the Conservative Party had done some ridiculous things for 14 years. It was almost impossible for it to make a sensible decision. But the parliament has always vacillated. They did support Israel very strongly, and Keir Starmer supported Israel very strongly. But you have this walking the line. Yes, you have a right to defend yourself, but stop killing people. You know,
But
uh,
that's not defending, that's
it
like,
it doesn't make sense
obstructing justice.
in a war scenario. I mean, in so yes, I don't know where it's going to go. Obviously, I don't see these things. If there is one shimmer of light that I could point to, it is something that I've always known is that our enemies can never keep quiet. They
Yeah.
always show themselves.
Yes,
And when you see your enemy, you have a fighting chance.
that's true.
But Europe itself, I mean, people think that because you're liberal, and because you want to let people in, that somehow that weakens you. And it does to this extent that you let people in who want to do you bad, who want to do you evil, and they take advantage. But I heard an ambassador, an English ambassador, many years ago who said, England is brilliant at getting itself out of a mess. Wonderful managers. But first, he said, we have to get into the mess, which is
Well, the question
a
is, how
love.
deep into the mess do you want to get? Like you already.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there's always that. There's always, but it was an English ambassador said this. I mean, about his own people. So there is that. What's happening in continental Europe at the moment is it's like a revisitation of the early 1800s. I mean, there all sorts of currents are coming forward, are coming through, and of course, Jews are at the apex. We're always at the point where people want to hit out, and they hit out at us. That's why many Jewish thinkers say we are the canaries. It happens to us first, but then it comes to everybody else next.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So, how about that? The last topic that we're going to talk about is that the beeper operation with Hezbollah, which is amazing, 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 like operation that took years to plan and like so sometimes simple things. It's very sophisticated, but it's also simple in the idea of like they looking for for they looking for to buy like whatever it is like communication devices. Then why won't we sell it to them? So
Yeah.
it's
There,
you know,
there's a very interesting thing that's happened over the last 14 months is that people have tried to say that Israel is unethical and in its projection of the war, in what it does. It bombs hospitals, it bombs schools, it kills children. And I've heard several soldiers saying that the way in which they are acting is one of the most ethical that they have ever seen in terms of how an army fights in the urban environment. What was very interesting about the remit for the pages was that the amount of weaponry, the amount of munitions that had to be used in the pager was only enough to hurt the person who was holding it,
yeah,
not to
yeah.
hurt so much as a
Enemies.
child who was standing next to them. They tried, according to the thing you sent me, many different experiments on dummies to make sure that that is what they manage. There's very few armies, uh, officers, or secret services that would be that careful in this
Yes,
world.
yes, yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I don't think
yeah,
that once a country, even the UK, once it's gonna understand who's his enemy, and once it's gonna start fighting it, they're not gonna wait and like they're gonna go with full force. They're not gonna be considerate of the neighbor or the parent or the child. They're just gonna do it. But us,
yeah, I agree.
because we are, first of all, held to higher standard. Um, uh, and stupidly enough, in my opinion, we put our soldiers' lives before the enemy's life, which I don't think it should be like that. I think it should be like any other country. Then we do the maximum that we can in order to prevent, we put our soldiers at risk
Hmm,
uh,
yeah,
in order to not kill someone who might be to some degree not not involved or innocent. Again,
yeah.
which is a
Well,
very small portion of that community, that population.
I think Douglas Murray and others have pointed out the heavy cost, nearly 400 men and soldiers killed in Gaza, the heavy cost of
Mhm.
being careful.
Yeah.
And it is not a cost that other people are willing to pay. I remember during Desert Storm, an American general was talking. They were outside some town or whatever, and he said, "We're having to be careful. Of course, I've got Marines here. They just want to roll over the whole place." That was their training. There's the buildings, flatten the lot.
Mhm.
Um, and that is, in a way, maybe we are teaching people to be more ethical. I mean, that has been part of the
Yeah,
work
but
of
how many?
the
That's like
Jewish.
borderline Christianity, Catholic. What is it? The other chick, borderline, like, insanity in my opinion. But
Yeah,
that's what it is, and that's how, like, we spoke about it last time, and I said, like,
yeah.
this is the agenda of very, very, specific line of people within the Israeli government and decision makers, which now is coming to hopefully changing those agendas and terms. Um, but yeah, this particular operation was brilliant, was planned for many, many, many years. And yeah, like, I mean, the moment um
It's
it
had some
happened.
effects that they weren't expecting. I mean, the fall of Syria was not the plan.
It's a
It's
side
something
effect.
that's just happened.
It's a side
It's,
effect.
it's a wonderful side effect,
Exactly.
but it was something that happened because Hezbollah was taken out,
Yeah.
and the people in Syria who'd been fighting Assad took their chance.
Yeah.
But they also took their chance when there was Iran and Russia were involved in other places. So Russia couldn't really send its air force in to support
Russia
Assad
is too
anymore,
busy in his
and
own.
Iran could,
Iran is
yeah,
on
and
its
Iran could
knees.
send
Yeah.
Hezbollah.
No.
So, so the fall of Syria, let's see if that's going to be a positive. I think the jury is well out on
Yes.
exactly what's going to happen. I noticed Jabala is now wearing a suit and not army fatigues. Good for him. Um, but let's see. I don't know.
Well,
But I do know that they're going to have to deal with Iran at some stage.
yes.
That's unfinished history. That is really unfinished history.
Mhm.
Um, and when I say Iran, I mean the mullahs. I don't mean the Iranian people. I mean the
Yeah,
mullahs.
of course, because
Um,
we know that
uh,
the Iranian people, like, I think you said, like 80% of them, 90% of them don't really support, like, the regime. And a lot of them,
apparently,
like, I mean, if you go, I mean, back to the 70s, again, Iran was a very flourishing country. It was like a beautiful country, a safe country, and then, like, again, the extremist fundamentalistic Khomeini and his Sharia law
mm.
ideas have taken, place.
And there is a problem there historically with other countries trying to manage countries that have been part of an empire, and they just trying to make decisions outside of the country about how it should rule itself. I mean, the Shah was pretty corrupt. And didn't care very much, and that gave the entry for the Islamists to come in. Um,
Yes,
and
but is it like, yeah, that's, I guess, another discussion about who is
there's
the,
another
like,
discussion. Yeah.
yeah, to like, who are we, the West, to go and, like, intervene and,
We
like,
we did, we did, but there's also, I think, the serious idea that although Mossad planned this 10 years ago, walkie-talkies and pages, and it came off brilliantly, that's it. That can never be used again.
no, but they
That's done.
already planned the next thing. That's the thing.
Exactly.
And
So you have
it
to
was
go
like,
on.
and he said that also in the interview. He said, like, it put fear in them that in the following week, people didn't even turn on the air conditioning, scaring, like, being scared that
Yes,
it's gonna
yeah,
blow
I
up.
saw that.
So
I
as
saw
long as
that.
it's in
Yes.
your conscience, like, in your mind, that 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 Israel has this reach, then you'll be a little bit more careful, or you'll be
Yeah.
more afraid to do something.
And I
Um,
think, but trauma works on both sides because I think we're traumatized. We're traumatized from October the 7th.
course.
I don't think anybody is going to be standing on the other side of a fence with the Gazans on the other side, not worried anymore. And I don't think anybody's going to be in those houses that hasn't got a weapon of some kind to protect themselves.
Yes.
And I'm sure that from now on, across borders, we won't have security doors that can't be locked
Mm.
because we thought that the safe rooms were just to help save us from bombs. We
Yeah.
weren't expecting the person to be on the other side of the door.
Yeah.
Um, things will change. Yeah,
Yes. Yes.
things will change.
Yes.
Henry said that. He said the trauma has gone very deep.
Yes, it has. One of the first, I think, weeks, um, someone, like wrote a post, like a short post that says like, so who knows, like, does anyone knows like how much does it cost to provide psychological, consultation for traumatic, like, 6 million, 9 million traumatic people. Like,
Yeah,
everybody in
yeah,
Israel needs like treatment. It's not something that is like nobody takes lightly. Every person has been affected by it. Every person from south to north of Israel has
mm,
been affected by it.
yeah.
So yeah, but still those kind of victories are the ones that bring us the belief, the pride, the understanding that we still can, like, continue, move on. They haven't destroyed us, and they will never. Nobody will destroy us because that's how it is. Because I believe Hashem is
Yeah.
with us, but that's what it is. Like history, like we are the only ones alive since the biblical times, and we can align to that. Like, we can show that. Any other empires have been they're not non-existent now. So we're gonna stay here and we're gonna stay for as long as people are gonna live. Um,
And stay strong.
but
Yeah.
Am Israel
And I
Shalom.
think that's what we're planning for. I think that when they said in that 60 minutes, the next thing, we can't use this again, but we're already on to the next thing. We know what we're going to be doing next time.
They're
And
probably
I think that's
already,
it.
yeah, done it. They're
You
gonna
have to be one
already,
step ahead.
yeah,
Always have to be
always,
one or two steps ahead.
yeah,
And I think we've got the ability to do that. I think the world
yeah,
has seen time and again this little country
no,
fighting above its weight.
no,
And now, strategically, there was a time, I think in the early 80s, the Americans supplied us with some F-16s. And whenever these huge, great weapons of war are taken from one country to another, they go with a lot of technicians to help the new country work out how to handle them, what to do.
mhm.
And I think about 6 months, 9 months in, the Americans said, "How are the new F-16s doing?" And I think the Israelis were either talked back or whoever the liaison was says, "Oh, they're doing very well now. We've made the modifications." And the Americans looked and said, "Modifications?" It was like, no one touches our stuff. It's perfect when we send it. Now, what are modifications? They were fascinated to know exactly what we've done. Oh,
Yeah.
I say
But
we, but it's
we
nothing
had
to do
like
with
also
me.
our own airplane that called they used to the name its name was the Lavi, I think. Yeah, the Lavi. And
Yes, yes.
IAI was the one who like built it, manufactured it. It was better than the other airplanes at that
Yeah,
time.
it was.
Was
Yeah,
much so it
yeah.
was
And they asked us to
superior.
close it down.
But then
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Americans said, okay, you can't use it. We're gonna shut it down and you're gonna use ours. Uh,
Yes, yeah.
well, hopefully we're gonna be
But I think that
unleashed from those shackles.
we should never be surprised at that. I mean, we've risen to the top of every profession, every in every country that we have lived in, and now we have our own country. Is it surprising that we're beginning to become very good at war? It's tragic,
Yeah.
but it's not surprising. We have produced generals in the past. In England, we had a general. We had several generals in France.
Mhm.
We people um, I think the Arabs in particular just got used to the fact that we weren't fighters. We didn't fight because we had no country to fight for. And whenever we fought, we were surrounded by so many people that we were just obliterated.
Mhm.
Well, it's not so easy to do it.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't happen.
Okay, Daniel.
Look after yourself.
Yes.
Have a lovely. It's the first night of Hanukkah tomorrow. Yes.
Yes, it is. We're gonna light Hanukkah.
Yeah. Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
Happy Hanukkah.
May be a light for all of us,
Be a light.
and
Absolutely.
the winning of the smaller group.
We must always
bigger
win.
groups.
The
Yeah.
bigger group. I'll talk to you again soon. Always lovely to spend time with you.
All right, you too. Bye.
Bye.
ותמיד תהיה לי רק טוב, ותהיה לי פרנסה, תהיה לי עשירות, ורווקים ורווקות תהיה להם סיווג, תהיה גם רפואה שלמה ובריאות איתנה, חיים יפים מאושרים שנה אחרי שנה. השם יתברך תמיד
מה?
תראו על מה הם יורקים.
זה לא אני!
תראו על מה הם יורקים.
זה לא אני! זה לא אני!
זה אתה אני. תראה מה הם עשו. ירקו פה על התמונה, וזאת עוד מצלמת אותנו.
כן, אני אצלם אותך.
על מה? ועל מה עשינו?
אתה מאיים על הילדים.
לא מאיים, צילמתי אותם, אני מעלה את זה. אני מעלה את זה לאינטרנט, שאנשים יעשו מה שהם רוצים. חצופה.